The Social Angle, a podcast that helps promo pros gain an edge in the social media realm. I'm digital content director Vinny Driscoll, and on this episode, I am joined by Ryan Moore, CEO of All Made Apparel, to discuss ice baths. Yes, we're talking ice baths today. Why does Ryan take them every day? The effect it's had on his life, how he uses social media to document his journey, and much more. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Vinny, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have this conversation because I've been following your journey on TikTok. You've been posting a lot of ice bath videos. You're very effusive about the positive vibes that come with taking ice baths. So I said, you know what? I got to reach out to Ryan. I got to talk to him about ice baths, and just have this conversation. So before we get started, can you give us a brief intro of who you are, what you do, and how you found yourself in the promo industry?
Yeah, thank you. My name's Ryan Moore. I'm about 41 years old and got into t-shirt printing because I was in a punk rock band like 20 years ago. It seems like that's a long time ago. But 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, I was in a punk rock band through high school. And then I didn't go to college. I went to the University of Rock and Roll and toured for 4 years. We printed our own t-shirts. So that's how I got into t-shirt printing. But we were punk rock, and other punk rock bands saw that we printed t-shirts. So they're like, can you teach us how to do that? And maybe sells that little kit that you make to do it. And I started being essentially a manufacturer supplier to decorators in this industry at a very small level in 2004 with my first company called Ryonet. Started in my bedroom and a website, screenprinting.com. And that's how I actually got to get to know you guys. We started doing collaborative work and on the decorating side. We have a lot of the same customer base, being a supplier to decorators, and then never really understood the promo space until we started All Made Apparel. So about 12 years into the journey, 2016 started All Made Apparel. We always wanted to make a better shirt to print on, but then one of our customers asked us to help them make more t-shirts. They ran a nonprofit in Haiti called the Global Orphan Project, and that nonprofit made t-shirts instead of making orphanages. So they essentially was a job creation program, international job creation program. And so they asked us, hey, we really need help selling more t-shirts. You guys have a lot of customers that print on t-shirts. Maybe you could help us do that. So I went to Haiti. It was very impactful in my life. I didn't know how to start it, so I went and got 12 different decorators to come down on another trip to me. And then in 2016, we started All Made Apparel and did that for about 4 years on our own. And then partnered with Sanmar a couple years ago, and now have a great relationship, exclusive distributionship with Sanmar, and doing expanded the line. It's been a lot of fun. I'm also still in the decoration side as far as supplying decorators with different brands and manufacturing equipment. We have about 5 companies in total throughout the supply chain. So I love the industry. The promo industry I'm still new to it. I feel new to it from 2016 coming on board, really on the All Made side. But it's just such a great place. People are really eager to do cool things in it and make an impact. So it's been a great connection.
Yeah, I mean, I've interviewed you before about 3 or 4 years ago. I feel like you've been in the industry a long time. You say you feel still new to it. I feel like that sometimes too. I've been in the industry for 15 years. But yeah, you certainly have made your impact. And we're talking ice baths today. So let's get into the conversation. So as I mentioned earlier, I noticed you on TikTok, specifically, you were posting a lot of your ice baths, your daily ice baths, there, and really talking about the positive effects. So it's been about what, 4 years that you've been taking these daily ice baths? Is that right?
4.5 years. Yes.
Four and a
Yes.
half years. So you've been taking them every day. I can't even imagine. I can imagine maybe once a week, but you've been taking them every day. You're posting them on social media. Can you tell us why you started doing ice baths and the effect that it's had on you so far?
Well, actually, I was reminiscing, like, how did I get into this again? And I was like, oh my goodness, it's actually because of ASI that I do ice baths.
No
And so I was
kidding.
at a power summit. Okay, you can pull this picture out. I sent it to you a little bit earlier. I was at a power summit in 2018, at the ASI Power Summit. It was the first power summit that I've been to. We went because of All Made, and Jesse Isler spoke, and he spoke about like the 40% rule. And he's a super motivational speaker. If you don't know who
Hmm.
he is, I would definitely follow him. His wife's Sarah Blakesley,
Yep.
founder of Spanx. He's
Spanx.
like
Yeah.
just a power. power force in the space. And he's spoken at a few ASI events, but that was the first one that I saw him at. And he talked about this guy, this SEAL guy, about how like he went on this track and ran a bunch of feats, and just how like this SEAL guy, he actually came and lived with him for like a month and like completely like got him into shape. And that SEAL guy was David Goggins. David Goggins is like now a power. It was before like he was like he wanted his name to be known. I don't know why he didn't refer to him as David Goggins, because he was actually out there speaking and stuff. But he the SEAL conversation like really like tricked me. I was like, man, I kind of worked out a little bit. I like ran a mile a day. I did some push-ups at night. I was fairly active. I could go run a 5K and finish, in the top 100 or whatever. But I wasn't really serious about it. I was like, where's my 40%? If I'm only at 40%, what can I go to?
Sure.
And then the SEAL story really stuck with me. So I started researching Navy SEALs and signed up for a program called SEAL Fit, which is essentially a SEAL training or a Hell Week program in San Diego. And then the moment you start researching anything about Navy SEALs, coldness and freezing your butt off, and holding your breath underwater is like the first thing of like you have to do. So I was like, all right, well, how do I train for that? And so ice baths came into the picture then. And then I remembered my uncle, who's really into the fitness world, and he's an author as well, a huge business mentor of mine from a very young age. And I remember him talking about Wim Hof and doing ice baths in this frozen lake. He lived up in the mountains, actually next to Sandmar in Seattle area. And I was like, you are crazy, man. Like, how you jump in that frozen lake and sitting there for minutes? He's like, this Wim Hof guy. I'm like, all right, crazy. And so I remembered it. And actually, my dad told me, I'm like, what was that guy's name again? My dad told me about it. And so I started researching him. And then once I started researching him, I actually started doing it. And I started doing the method. I think my first ice bath was in 42-degree water. So it was chilly, but not icy. And it was maybe 90 seconds, 70 seconds. It was pretty short. Okay. But soon I was into the full effect. It was about 2 months until a little bit less than 2 months until I got into like doing 10 minutes or so at a time.
Okay. So, we're going to talk about Wim Hof in a second, but so you talk about how invigorating these baths are and the positivity that you take out of these baths. Can you tell us a little bit more about how it's impacted, not only your professional life, but also your personal life?
Well, as an entrepreneur, I think a lot of people could probably relate to this, is your brain never turns off. And, even in school, like I went to a Christian school, like, oh, you pray. I'm like, I could never start praying. They're like, oh man, I'm like off in space somewhere. Or like meditate, like go to a meditation retreat or yoga or all this stuff. It's like my brain is never turning off. So the first thing I noticed in an ice bath, and still the biggest impact that I have today, is like when you're in there and you're doing the breathing and you do your breath holds, my brain goes to a different dimension. And since then I've been a lot more active. I've done a lot more I've been in some marathons. I've fasted. I think there's few ways you can actually reach those areas of your mind. And one is endurance events, like people call it hitting a wall in a marathon and getting through that and kind of go to this euphoric state. And then obviously the ultras, or even further than that, you can get it through fasting. A lot of the ancient cultures of the world, they talk about fasting, and you go on these vision quests, you don't eat. They have these amazing dreams and hallucinations or realities because their minds are in different dimensions.
Sure.
And you can get it through hallucinogenics. I've personally never tried that, but there's a lot of books and a lot of research done on that. And some like Steve Jobs did them, like shrooms and stuff like that. But an ice bath is I think the only one that you can do in under 10 minutes and completely control. Like you don't have to go run a marathon or not eat for days and then have no control of or being, high or something like that. You're in it, and you can I think that you reach the same dimension of your mind. I've only experienced it through endurance and fasting, never hallucinogenics, but essentially you're in a different spot. Your mind shuts off. You're able to separate mind and body. And I do meditation, prayer, gratefulness. And that's the biggest impact overall. It's just mentality. and meditation, like that calmness.
So you've been able
But
to
yeah,
reach this euphoric state through these ice baths.
yeah, I would say probably 70 to 80% of the time I'm in an ice bath, you get to that, and you don't even know you're going into it until you're in it. And then you're in it, and then all of a sudden it's like 7, 8 minutes. And
Yeah.
you're like, I could stay here longer. I don't have to, but
Mm.
you're waking up back to life. It's a very interesting place to be. Part of it's the breathing, part of it's the
Mhm.
breath work as well that puts you there, but also the cold and the separation of your body that you're in. And then, like, I did notice one of the things, I think the best book on the subject is called What Doesn't Kill Us. And it was actually a, a hackbuster that went out to disprove the Wim Hof method. He's like, this guy is crazy kook. And
Mhm.
so I'm going to totally disprove him. And then he like became one of his biggest followers and wrote this book. And so climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with him. And in that, it talked about like the transformation of your body going through ice baths, and that you essentially, your white fat cells that we mostly have in our body turn to brown fat, which is a harder, denser, more natural fat that like animals have. So like a deer, like I'm in Washington right now, and the deer, it's snowing. It snowed this morning. The deer have the same coat that they have in the summertime when it's 95 degrees out or 100 degrees out.
Right.
They're not changing the way they're not putting parkas on in the wintertime, and they're not wearing shorts and hanging by the pool in the
Huh.
summertime, because they're made, their biomass or their physiology is a little different. It's built differently, and we're animals. We just conditioned ourselves through time to be very comfortable and sit next to a fire. I mean, even through the dark ages, like the European culture conditioned humanity to be in this comfortable state, where in reality, like our bodies can live in high heats, they can live in very low heats without much additional
Sure.
protection. Our
Sure.
bodies are naturally built. Like when the pilgrims showed up and the Indians met them, the Indians, it was like Massachusetts, and you know how cold it is, like on the
Sure.
East Coast in the wintertime, and they're like in like
Right. Their skin is
they're
exposed.
not like,
Yeah.
yeah, their skin is, it's
Yeah.
not like, they're not wearing like these crazy furs and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it's it's pretty cool. So I noticed that effect. Your body does go through some crazy changes when you're going through that, but it was a very cool process to go through. And then immune system, I think it's really hard to prove. Like, hey, I don't get sick as much. I didn't get sick a lot
Huh.
before, but it definitely, like having COVID, going through that experience and not even knowing I had it,
Huh.
when my
Okay.
family, the only reason I knew I had it is my family got all sick, and I was doing ice baths through the whole thing, and so it's like,
Right. Right. So personally, you feel like your health is improved with these baths. What about professionally?
it's always a fun topic. you know, it's water cooler conversation, I guess, cooler water conversation.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's, oh, I've done it with a lot of my customers, a lot of people that I work with. It's just a fun thing to experience. We took one to a trade show once. That was a fun. People were like, "What are you doing? Is this even legal?" They didn't even know.
You
Like
did
yeah, I'm
a
just gonna put it.
you did an ice bath at a trade show?
Yeah, I had a
Oh
whole
wow.
setup, and like I hauled ice down from the hotel room and filled up this bucket. I still have that ice bath. It was a Texas trade show. It was an impression show, a decoration show, and like got the show director to do it even. So
Huh. Wow.
took
That's
some
great.
took some videos of people trying it for the first time, but it has a very low conversion rate. If you don't think
Hmm.
anything is hard to sell, I think ice baths are probably the hardest thing I've ever sold
Sure.
in life. It's much
Sure.
easier to sell a t-shirt.
Sure. But have you been able to take away those lessons about being uncomfortable and take them into your professional life? Because I know you talk a lot on your TikToks about how we have to train ourselves to not get into that comfort zone, to be uncomfortable so that we could tap into the best parts of who we are. Is that what you have been able to do with the ice baths?
Yeah, I think different versions of it. they're both physically and then mentally, but you always have to continue to form those good habits and things of that nature. But the very act of doing it and overcoming the non wanting to do it on a daily basis is the first step of like, hey, if I can do this, then mentally I'm pretty much fit to do anything today.
Sure.
And because that was the hardest thing. You never want to go in it. It's always like, this does not sound fun,
right,
especially in the wintertime and you have it outside and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but you never, I said this in one of my meetings, like, I never regret getting out. They're like, oh, duh.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Of course you don't regret getting out.
Obviously.
But, no, I remember I'm always glad I went in, I guess is a different way to put it.
Sure.
Because it does change your day quite in a good way. So that's on a daily level. And then, I think the meditation part, I've noticed it a lot with my kids and my family. The ideas that come out of it, and the gratitude, and just the different perspective that you get out of that situation.
So it sounds like all really good things have come out of taking ice baths. So again, I'm talking to Ryan Moore of All Made Apparel, and we're talking about ice baths and the benefits. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll get them on live. Now, Ryan, I've got to ask you, what is the longest ice bath that you've ever taken?
Not super long. I think 14 minutes is the longest.
Okay. At what temperature?
It was normally I try to keep my ice bath around 33 to 34 degrees. So there's still ice in it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when I had a circulation unit for a little bit, you could actually get it lower, like 31 degrees, which is cold. 33 degrees is cold when you have ice.
Yeah.
Ice touching your skin, especially. But yeah.
Wow. I can't even imagine. You mentioned earlier 42 degrees was your first ice bath, and I can't even imagine 42 degrees. I was just in Aruba where the water was like, 82 degrees, and I was like, this is perfect. I'll take that any day. So, so 42, 31.
42 degrees, it was shocking, literally. Like did the breathing work first, then went in, and like my body, it felt like I touched an electric fence or somebody threw a hairdryer in the ice bath. It went through shocks. And every once in a while, like I'll experience that again. You'll get weird sensations and things like that in your body as if you do this and you do it regularly. That's one thing. The other thing is like you'll shiver your butt off for a good 2 to 3 months of like just literally like for hours. I'd be sitting there like just your body's acclimating. And then you do have a lot more bowel movements for like the first few weeks as well as your body. And that's some of the things I run into. Like, no, you don't. No, I don't believe that. But also like, why am I going to the bathroom like 4 times a day? And it's your body's essentially doing a cleanse of all those white fat cells.
No kidding. So that's fascinating.
But I went in heavy. Once I decided to do it, I went in like 2 times a day for about 8 to 10 minutes a time.
Okay.
And it was winter, so it'd be really cold. But I'm glad I did it that way. I don't do every once in a while I'll do 2 times a day, but normally it's once a day and about 7 minutes. Right now.
Okay. So earlier we mentioned Wim Hof. Now, I think a lot of people know who Wim Hof is. If you don't know who Wim Hof is, you can look him up. He is a guy who has cultivated almost like a cult-like following in his use of ice baths, and he's been able to do things that scientifically a lot of people can't really explain. He's got what's called a Wim Hof method. Now, what you mentioned earlier when you first heard of Wim Hof, like you thought he was crazy. Now, do you ascribe to the Wim Hof method now? What have you learned about him, and do you find that some of his criticisms are founded? Like, what are your thoughts on him?
So I've never met Wim Hof personally or been to one of his retreats. I think it'd be really interesting to go to. Whenever I dive into something, I always dive in pretty heavily, whether it's sustainable, learning how to manufacture sustainable t-shirts. I'll get every book on the subject and just dive into it. Listen, I'm an audiobook guy, so I listen to it and then start to build my own opinions and understanding based around of experiences that I'm forming from what I'm learning. And so that was the same thing I did with ice baths. And there wasn't a ton, there's probably more books now because this was 4 years ago. But there was some really good podcasts and some really good books on him. So I got a hold of every single thing that I could imagine. He's got a really impactful story of how he got into the cold, and he was naturally drawn to it through a really traumatic event after a really traumatic event in his life.
Didn't his wife die? It was his death of his wife, I believe it was, right?
Yeah, she committed suicide too, and so he was left with 4 kids, and she was like, he had to deal with not only her death, but the fact that she did it on purpose, and it was a very, very big thing. And he was just drawn to this coldness, and then once he went in, he realized it started to heal him, and then he was starting to access different levels of himself. And so, like I said, the most impactful book is What Doesn't Kill Us, because it was actually written by a guy that was like, this guy's full of crap, and then like, whoa, this stuff really works. I went from a kind of overweight reporter to like a fairly fit guy that can go out and he does an ice bath every day. And then there's crazy stories out there of people that have gotten rid of cancer or have changed, seriously ill diseases through doing this. And, there's probably always truth, and there's a little bit of maybe not truth in all that stuff. But from what I've experienced, I believe in like the core basics of his teaching. When I never actually had heard of the Wim Hof cult or the cult of Hof or whatever. You referenced it in the question. And so I researched and I was like, what is this? And, there's some articles about some crazy, experiences at some of his live events and stuff like that. It's like, ooh, this sounds like it could definitely come off very cultish.
Sure.
But from what I've experienced, it's definitely not, it works. It 100% works. And I do it a little differently. He talks about doing the breathing before going in the ice or after going in the ice. I actually do the breathing in the ice. Don't recommend that, because when you're doing it, you can get lightheaded, and if you pass out, then you pass out in the ice or in the freezer. That's not good. But I've definitely gotten used to it. It helps me do the meditation stuff while I'm in there, and also it's faster as well. So, yeah.
I mean, he's got a fascinating story, like you said. I've watched some videos on him. I've read a little bit on him, and he definitely has tapped into something that's quite primal. And there are people that believe that you can do things with his method that not even science can fix. So I'll certainly going to post all that. I'll post some information on the website when we post our episode itself. Now, Ryan, I want to talk to you about your use of social media to document what you've been doing in the ice baths. You predominantly post on TikTok, from what I see. Although you might be posting somewhere else on your personal pages. But can you tell us how this has impacted your personal brand, and if it has had any effect at all on your business?
It has definitely impacted it's interesting content. I think I started doing videos before like Reels were a thing, TikTok was a thing, and they were a little bit longer, and people were always like, they'd get a few thousand views and do relatively well, document going into it first time, and, but not super engaged with. Last year, I started, I guess, doing more videos or whatnot. I'm not sure what prompted me to want to do more. And I put one to a Steve Harvey track that talks about, getting uncomfortable and being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and how that like drives success. And it just went like, it's really weird. I've never had a viral video. I've made tons of videos, thousands of them. And some of them have millions of views, but never viral. And my kid's like a YouTuber or wants to be a YouTuber. He's 13. And he literally had just had a viral video like pop. And then I was like, dude, that's so cool. He like got 1 million views. And he was actually at summer camp when he couldn't even check his phone. And I was like, I sent him like a camp message. I was like, your video just hit 1 million views. And he's like, sweet. But yeah, that video went viral on actually Instagram. And then I posted it 3 months, same exact video. I have no idea how social media works, by the way. So
I don't think anybody does, right? There's no magic bullet.
It got like, I think that video on Instagram has about 2.5 million views. It's 1.7-ish on my channel. And then the Sparta race reposted it, Spartan race reposted it.
Mhm.
And then some running channels reposted it. But then I did the same video, same soundtrack on TikTok 3 months later, and the exact same thing happened. But it got like 5 million views. So
Yeah.
it's just weird. Like why with that soundtrack, with that video, which wasn't even a very good video, it was pretty grainy and stuff like that, it did so well. And then a lot of the other content started to do better because of that.
Sure.
Has it affected business in a positive way? I would say it hasn't hurt. I can't really attribute it like to people buying more t-shirts
Sure.
because
Sure.
of ice baths. Mel was like, Mel's our marketing director at Allmade. She was like, hey, your ice bath videos are starting to do pretty good. Would you mind like wearing some Allmade shirts in the ice bath when you
That's
take
funny.
them?
Yeah, I thought the same thing because I went to go look at your TikTok account and I noticed that you have it under your personal account, but that first video that you did about ice baths, you got the 5 million views. And then I noticed because you had videos prior to that doing, some extreme things sports wise, but then after you got that 5 million views, you started to do almost exclusively all ice bath videos because you notice you tapped into something, and that first video got a ton of comments. Anytime you have a video that gets 5 million views, you're going to have a million likes, million comments and shares. So you seem to have tapped into the potentially the ice bath community as well, and now you're posting more and more content that's ice bath in nature. Why not, if you're going to get a lot of exposure, why not put your brand out there as well? I could tell what Mel was trying to also grab there. But look, I don't care if it's your personal, your business page. That type of exposure and that type of virality is certainly going to be good for you as a person. Whether or not it's your business or it's just you're in the business of promoting yourself. That is, it's going to help no matter what you do. So kudos to you for certainly taking it to social media. And you're definitely in a space where ice baths are important. A lot of people take the ice baths and they're big and people believe in them. So I think that's kind of where you're at on your TikTok. And I applaud you. You're doing some really cool stuff, and you're getting a lot of engagement. So,
Thank
um,
you. It's
yeah,
been interesting. I would say I don't see how the famous TikTokers or Instagrammers or influencers do it because it is
it
crazy to
it's
be.
demanding.
I
It's
feel the need to like respond to every
right.
person and like connect and it's like, oh man, this is like, wow, how did they
For
do
sure.
this?
For sure. And look, it's a good problem to have. And I think that uh, if you ask anybody in this industry if they had that problem, they would love it. It's
Yeah.
so few people have the luxury of having virality with their content that they create on social media, and they would love to have the opportunity to potentially respond to every single comment and every DM, and potentially network and build up a relationship with somebody, to what end, who knows, but still you're building your book of people that you're networking with. So to me, I think it's certainly it's a win-win. Now I got to ask you, because once I decided I wanted to talk to you about this, then my mind started thinking like, hey, maybe one day I would like to try an ice bath. But if someone wanted to get started with ice baths, how can they do so? What advice would you have for them? And if they don't want to push themselves in such a way as ice baths, but they want to be uncomfortable, so that they get out of that routine. What advice would you give me? So it's a dual question. How would people get into ice baths, and how can they push themselves, but not in the ice bath direction?
Well, should I jump in one and talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it in
Let's
there?
let's see let's see you get into that ice bath. We definitely have Ryan set here to jump into an ice bath. I got to see this.
Okay. Well, first thing is I will say I never had gone in a t-shirt before. Mel asked me
First
to
for
do
everything, right?
it. And
Yeah.
so she was like, try it. I was like, oh yeah, it's definitely easier. So
Okay.
because you just even like I didn't wear running socks for a long period of time, and I've started to wear running socks in the bath because I noticed my feet starting to go numb.
Okay.
Or having like when I would wear tight fitting shoes like basketball shoes or snowboard boots, they would just my toes would start to go numb a little bit. I think they're just
Okay.
getting your feet are probably the most impacted because
Right.
they're the least around you. So I do wear running socks now, and then if you want to start wearing a t-shirt, definitely helps a little bit.
Do
Hold
you
on.
recommend a, a moisture wicking t-shirt, or are you
Yeah, like the All Made Tri Blend,
sure?
which is a it's modal polyester
Yeah, yeah.
and has moisture wicking in it. Works great.
Uh-huh.
It's hailing right now in Washington, which is awesome.
I can't
Perfect,
believe that you
perfect for an
guys are
ice
getting hail.
bath.
We have like 75 degrees on the East Coast. Beautiful day. Um, but yeah, look at that. It's
Yeah, I will say it's definitely the best time to get into an ice bath when it's hailing.
okay. I'll take
Um,
your word for it.
I'm gonna, it's worse.
Okay. All right. For those who are going to be
All right,
listening
for
here,
those who are going to be listening here.
Ryan's going to get into an ice bath.
Okay. Okay. Are you there?
Yep. Yep.
All right. So I got my socks on. I, typically just go on my boxers and without a shirt, but I'm going to do the All Made shirt today. Okay. So the first thing I do, I put my hands in and then I put my hands on my thighs. So this is really cold right now. I was traveling last week and I left my freezer on, which like froze like 6 inches thick. So
Oh my
I
goodness.
but I keep my hands on my thighs. And then the first thing I do when I get in is you really want to, there's your flight or flight reflex that pretty much hit like right away. And you got to get through that. That takes about 30 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds. So most of the time when people take their first ice bath, they're in and out. They're like, I can't do it. And they're like, I'm out,
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Totally.
you got to get past that first 60 seconds. And the way to do that is just that breathing, whether you do the Wim Hof breathing the entire time or not. It's a diaphragm breath, similar to like a labor breath. So
Sure.
you're like all the way in as much as you can do into your
And all the
diaphragm and
way
then
out. Yep.
all the way out. So I do that about 30 times and then I'll do a breath hold. So a breath hold is like when you exhale all the way out, like, and then I just hold it as long as I can hold it. And then what you've done in that period of time is that you've hyperoxygenated your blood. And then as you're breathing, your body doesn't have any more oxygen or a very small amount of oxygen in your lungs.
Hmm.
And so it starts to burn that blood or the oxygen in the blood and it heats up your entire nervous system.
Huh.
So it's an ice bath is essentially equivalent of your entire body or your entire vascular system doing a rep, like at the gym. It's like a
Okay.
workout for your entire body. Um, and I will say, when you go in and you do a head dunk immediately, actually acclimate faster to the cold. Those chemicals. I could send you a follow up write up about it afterwards, but there's an actual chemicals that leave your liver and hit your brain in about 30 seconds. And that kind of gives you that euphoric feeling.
Huh.
And that happens quicker when when you've put your head underwater faster.
Okay. Okay. Now, um, what about timing yourself? Do you time yourself, or do you just naturally go in, don't worry about the time, and just get out when you think it's time to get out?
I will typically go in for about 7 minutes. I'll do 2 sessions and then I'll say like meditations and prayer throughout that. And that takes about 7 minutes on average. I will typically leave my running watch on or just check the time before I get in and just to know. So yeah,
Okay.
I don't I don't put a stopwatch on it. Just kind of like, oh, that was the 7 minute one or that was a 9 minute one. Because sometimes you're like in there and you're in such a euphoric state that you just go to a different place and you don't realize how long it is,
Yeah. 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 I'm getting cold
which
just
is
looking at you.
which is it's not happening right now. But
Yeah.
it also is pretty easy. It's a lot easier to take them if you're talking to somebody too. So
Okay. Yeah. Maybe. Hopefully, the time goes by quicker. Um, so yeah, Ryan. So real quick, I know that you're struggling there. You're not able to meditate, but if somebody wants to invest in something like this, Is it pricey? Is it a lot of resources involved? How can they get an ice bath? I mean, I'm sure there's very small or very cheap ways to do it, and then you can probably scale up. What type of setup do you have?
So I got it before those ice baths kind of hit the market. Now there's the
Hmm.
cold plunge, and there's a ton of them out there. So I started it with a horse trough. So I just went to a Tractor Supply store, and it's like $100. I think they're like $130 now. It's a 110 gallon, 120-gallon tank. In Washington, like obviously it was just snowing and hailing, so I think it was 33 degrees. So the water
Oh
would be
wow,
33 degrees, maybe
sure.
34 degrees in the morning. In the wintertime, no problem. So I started in November and actually did it. My first ice bath was with one of our All Made founders, Dom from Superior Inc., and one of our All Made guys, Beaconson from this is his first trip to America. He's Haitian. And
Huh,
he's like, bro, what did you get me into, man? Like he's like,
that's
and his
funny.
like Rasta,
Yeah.
it was we were laughing so hard at each other because we were like just like we'd be out of this thing already, like just running and then freezing the rest of the day. But
Huh.
we just started with that, and then that worked through about March, and then by like April time, it just wasn't getting cold enough anymore, and so I started putting ice in it, and it just started getting expensive. So I bought this freezer, which is just a Whirlpool chest freezer, the big one, and I siliconed it out on the inside so it wouldn't leak. And it freezes out in about 2 to 3 days and stays frozen for a week, 2 weeks. I might turn it on maybe every week to keep it cold,
Okay.
keep the ice in it, and then the water lasts about a month. I put hydrogen peroxide in it, food grade hydrogen peroxide in
Hmm.
it. The water will last for about a month. You can get filter systems, which I just found kind of complex. I like to empty the water anyway, so yeah, I use it to water the pond or the lawn or whatnot. But that's what I do. But there's a ton of options now. My neighbor has a
Yeah.
super nice one. He is funny. Like he's like, "Hey Ryan, have you ever heard of ice baths?" And he's like, he had just moved in. And I'm like, "Yeah." Oh, he's like, "Let me show you mine." And then so he showed me his setup. Is like, oh, he has like a whole sauna setup, much nicer than my DIY system. But it
Yeah.
definitely gets the job done.
That's cool. And if you go to Ryan Moore's TikTok, which is I believe it's TikTok slash
Yeah, more
MOORRYAN.
Ryan.
So
Yeah,
it's basically
or Ryan Moore on Instagram. Either
or
one.
Ryan Moore on Instagram. You actually give tutorials on how to maintain your ice bath. So there's a lot of good information if you're looking to get into ice baths. Now, Ryan, any final thoughts on promo pros looking to push themselves out of their comfort zone, get uncomfortable, and try to use it to get to be more successful in their business?
I think anytime you can put yourself in an uncomfortable situation, you're winning. Like getting up there and speaking, going, approaching a client, doing an extra cold call one day, going after the big account. Like those are all good things to train yourself. I think if you do, like, this is great, exercising, going to the gym, doing things that suck and getting over it. Like it, it makes you a better person. It will make you better in your business. You are, whether you're in sales or whether you're running the business or whatever you're doing, the sum of the result is the sum of who you are. So if you invest in yourself and do things that make you better, you will get the results throughout your life and your family and your relationships and in your business because of that. So, uh, yeah, just
Perfect.
just jump
That's
in,
a
I guess. Just
Yeah, just jump
and
in. I love it.
if you have any questions about ice baths, I said like it's I think like doing it once is probably like a 10% conversion rate of like
Uh,
I'll try it. And then like
right.
I said, we got a show director to do it once at a trade show. But like sticking with it, it's gotta be 0.2%.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
low.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, it's certainly as uncomfortable as you can possibly get, I'm sure. I mean, on the East Coast, we have the polar bear plunges down the Jersey Shore from where I'm from. And I see these people doing it. I'm like, these people are crazy, but you only do it once a year. And I'm like, okay, if I had to do it, I could do it once a year. But the thought of doing it every single day, I mean, it's daunting, but it does put you in a mindset. It puts you in a different place to get used to being uncomfortable. And that's, I think, with your final point, putting yourself in uncomfortable positions will help you get better at what you do because it's going to take you outside of that routine, and it's going to force you to, you know, do the things that you don't want to do to be more successful. So, Ryan,
Yep.
that's a great, you know, way to end this episode. How could people reach you if they want to?
So again, at Ryan Moore at Instagram, at Moore Ryan at TikTok. I'm definitely a little bit more active on Instagram. Any of our at typically at most of the trade shows with the Allmade team,
Hmm.
and connect with us at Allmade. If you do want to take an ice bath for the first time, like I said, it's definitely easier in an Allmade shirt. So I'll give a shout out there. And oh, I actually did the math. Uh, I, ice baths are eco-friendly because instead of doing a shower every morning, which takes an average of 17 gallons of water, I typically use this water for about a month. So I typically save about 300 gallons of water over the course of a month by taking ice baths, and which is about the same amount as this organic cotton shirt that I'm wearing saves.
Oh,
So
nice. So I'm assuming that your ice baths replace your normal showering routine then.
in the morning, yeah.
Okay,
So
that's awesome.
instead of doing a shower after a workout, I'll typically still do one at night, but yeah, I take an ice bath. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation, Ryan. Thank you for spending a few cold minutes of your day with me. And I'm really excited to get this posted. You know, we'll get this out next week. But Ryan, thank you again for your time.
All right. See you, Vinny. I'm gonna dunk.
Uh,
Bye.
yeah, let's see it. Oh, Ryan.
Woo!
Whew. Now I'm freezing. All right, Ryan, we're gonna let you go. Thanks for joining us. We'll
All
see you
right.
next time on the Social Angle.